23 people are wanted by police in the Mongolian language teaching incident. On the first day of school registration, the classrooms in Southern Mongolia school is empty. Parents refuse to send their children to school in order to express their objection. Mongolian teaching was cancelled. Students refused to go to school. Police capture people to go back to school. In Yulan-hot city of Xin'an, police are hunting for Mongolian students everywhere and take them back to class. Mongols protest against the ban on learning Mongolian. In Tongliao, Mongolian students are shouting, "School strike! School strike!" At the #1 middle school in Ganchi, Inner Mongolia, students are protesting. Students are shouting in Mongolian, "Defend our legal rights!" In the high school attached to Hohhot Normal University, Inner Mongolia, students are protesting and shouting in Mongolian. The demonstrations are supported by the people present. At Inner Mongolia Huoqi Middle School, students break through police roadblocks. Clips show that people are protesting and shouting in Mongolian, "Defend our mother tongue with our blood." A local says in the video, in Hohhot National Experimental School, the campus is empty. On September 1st, in Shiwu Banner Mongolian Middle School, no student came to register. All classes are the same. On the campus of the #1 Mongolian primary school in Xilinghot, there was no student and no teacher's car in the parking lot. In Bayan-Erden Elementary School, no one was seen. In the Mongolian primary school in Chifeng City, only one Mongolian student came to register. Here is a student who came for registration, the only one. More than 300 employees of the Inner Mongolia TV station co-signed a statement rejecting the educational mode of adopting a national uniform textbook for first graders in elementary and middle schools for ethnic minorities. Because this action violated the constitution of the PRC and the law for ethnic autonomous zones, they supported and insisted on the bilingual education that's been used for 70 years. The video shows the cops are beating people. The government of Inner Mongolia announced penalties for parents who are party members or public servants if their children boycott schools. This is the hard evidence that the CCP ruled like a mafia. The urban management officers of Changchun carried out robberies in open daylight. At 4 p.m. on September 2nd, in Changchun, the CCP's urban management officers assaulted the people and robbed them. On September 2nd, snow fell over the peak of Mount Wutai. Petitioners coming to Beijing were intercepted at the railway station. Where do I register? The outside. Okay, why register? Because I found that you are on the blacklist. What does it say? We will investigate and verify. Why do you investigate? Why am I on the blacklist? Do I have criminal records? Why was I blacklisted? What does the blacklist say? Can I see it? You can't read it because it's a police document. How come I can't read it? I have the right to know. You took away my ID. Why can't I know what I did? You should go to the lobby first. Why should I stamp a seal? I bought tickets legally, but you won't let me leave. Today is August 30th, 2020. I want to take the train to Beijing, but they seized my ID. They wouldn't let me leave and asked me to cooperate with the investigations. Gosh, they treated petitioners as criminals, while real criminals were at large. Hailstorms in Beijing, divine rage. On September 1st, Beijing experienced hailstorm and heavy rain. Large hails fell over Baotou, Inner Mongolia. What kind of weather? This is the second round of large hails. Look, the hail balls are huge. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Keith Krach may visit Taiwan before the end of the year. The largest state enterprise, China Railway Group, stated that it serves the people but has reported a 100 billion RMB loss. Huawei claims that if it needs microchips, the automaker BYD could produce at any time. On September 1st, an armored vehicle was shown at the opening ceremony of an elementary school in Ningbo. A training sergeant ate the students' leftover food to emphasize conserving food. During military training, a student left half a plate of rice. The drill sergeant ate the rice with his hands. It's okay to teach the kids, but don't use dramatic measures. We should let the kids understand the problem and stop wasting food. On September 4th, Taiwan, the US, Japan, and the EU will discuss the restructuring of supply chains in Taiwan.
India and China have once again fallen out over a disputed border in the Himalayas on Tuesday. India accused Chinese troops of taking provocative actions in the mountain area. It said this happened while commanders from both sides held talks on Monday to reduce tensions. An Indian official said their country's troops had deployed on 4 strategic hilltops after what New Delhi called an attempted Chinese incursion along a border in Ladakh over the weekend. The Asian giants have been locked in a border confrontation for months in the high-altitude Ladakh area. The two countries have disputed the course of the frontier for more than half a century. An Indian official, briefed on the latest incident, said soldiers responded to an attempt by a large number of Chinese infantry to push through a key mountain pass late on Saturday.
According to the U.S. Air Force, an unarmed Minuteman III ICBM equipped with a test re-entry vehicle was launched early on Wednesday from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. It traveled over 6,700 kilometers to the Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands. This comes a month after the last U.S. test launch. The Air Force said its tests are to verify the accuracy and reliability of its ICBM system.
Today, I'm announcing the State Department has established a mechanism requiring approval for senior Chinese diplomats in the United States to visit university campuses and to meet with local government officials. Cultural events with groups larger than 50 people hosted by the Chinese Embassy and consular posts outside our mission properties will also require our approval. Additionally, we're taking further steps to ensure that all official PRC, embassy, and consular social media accounts are properly identified as government accounts, Chinese government accounts. We're simply demanding reciprocity. Access for our diplomats in China should be reflective of the access that Chinese diplomats in the United States have, and today's steps will move us substantially in that direction. Further on China, Undersecretary Kroc sent a letter recently to the governing boards of American universities, alerting them to the threats the Chinese Communist Party poses to academic freedom, to human rights, and to university endowments. These threats can come in the form of illicit funding for research, intellectual property theft, intimidation of foreign students, and opaque talent recruitment efforts. University governing boards can help ensure their institutions have clean investments and clean endowment funds by taking a few key steps. Disclose all PRC companies' invested in endowment funds, especially those in emerging market index funds. Divest from Chinese companies on the Commerce Department entity list that are contributing to human rights violations, military coercion, and other abuses. And simply understand the recommendations issued by the President's Working Group on Financial Markets, which examine the risk to investors of Chinese companies that are listed on U.S. stock exchanges.
The Pentagon says that China's well on its way to its goal of becoming a, quote, world-class military that can match or even exceed the power of the United States Armed Forces. China now controls the largest navy in the world, with roughly 350 ships and submarines compared to 293 for the United States, although we have more aircraft carriers, which is an important detail there. So it's also attempting to double the size of its nuclear warhead stockpile, according to this report, over the next 10 years. What do you make of this report?
Well, I think it's largely accurate. If anything, it may be a little bit understated. China clearly is the most rapid growing military in the world today. They exceed U.S. capability, as you mentioned, in Navy ships, but also offensive long and medium range missiles and also air defense systems. And where they're heading strategically on the long range military path is by 2035 or 40 to be the super dominating military power in the world, something the United States has held ever since the collapse of the Soviet Union. That's the path that they're on, and they're not there yet.
So one of the things that came up in the interview that Attorney General Bill Barr did today with Wolf Blitzer at CNN was he was asked, who presents the bigger election threat? Because we know that the military aspect of this is just one aspect. They try to infiltrate our elections. They try to expand their influence all through Africa and other places around the world. But this is what the Attorney General said. Watch this.
Russia, China, and Iran. Which is the most assertive, the most aggressive in this area?
I believe it's China.
Which one?
China.
China more than Russia right now?
Yes.
Why do you say that?
Because I've seen the intelligence. That's what I've concluded.
What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, he's absolutely right. It used to be Russia, but China, their cyber and espionage program is hard to get your head around, the scale of it. There's not tens of thousands involved in it. There's hundreds of thousands involved in this.
In relation to the numbers of consular staff that we have around Australia representing the Chinese. So we've got 148 consular staff right around the country, 11 in Adelaide, 10 in Adelaide, when other countries have far fewer nationally. And in Adelaide, the nearest country is Italy with 2. And we perhaps need to be winding that sort of stuff back.
You're saying limit how many have repercussions for China, limit how many consular staff they're allowed in Australia, literally start sending some back?
Well, it's excessive at the moment, and we know that China is engaging in political interference. We know that they're trying to influence our politics. We know that they're trying to get access to industrial and university secrets. And we permit that to occur by having large number of consulate officials here in Australia. There's no question that some of this interference, some of this espionage is being run for some of these consulates.
on China. Undersecretary Kroc sent a letter recently to the governing boards of American universities, alerting them to the threats the Chinese Communist Party poses to academic freedom, human rights, and to university endowments. These threats can come in the form of illicit funding for research, intellectual property theft, intimidation of foreign students, and opaque talent recruitment efforts. University governing boards can help ensure their institutions have clean investments and clean endowment funds by taking a few key steps. Disclose all PRC companies' invested in endowment funds, especially those in emerging market index funds. Divest from Chinese companies on a Commerce Department entity list that are contributing to human rights violations, military coercion, and other abuses. And simply understand the recommendations issued by the President's Working Group on Financial Markets, which examine the risk to investors of Chinese companies that are listed on U.S. stock exchange. Further on China, Undersecretary
Pompeo wants to fight his way back in. I got the mic now, Mike, so you can't. No, the hammer drops again today, 10 o'clock at the State Department on the 75th anniversary of the formal end, the signing of the instruments of surrender of the Imperial Japanese forces 75 years ago today. Mike Pompeo, who's a student of history, steps up. First off, they leak into the South China Morning Post, the new alliance. And this alliance is, if I'm Lao Beijing, I'm feeling pretty good today. The cavalry is going to arrive, right? Understand that the way forward is to the destruction of the Chinese Communist Party and the freeing of the people of China. It's the great work of the unfinished work of the 20th century. And it will be the dominating story in the 21st. One of the reasons we focus on it so much. We're going to get to other things in a few minutes, particularly this election, which is so important to. And Raheem, I've got a question, and Jack, jump in. Where's the Biden campaign on China? How can you have one of the central issues of the day? It was in Politico yesterday. President Trump. We ought to get that article if we can get it up. The AVN guys. I think we got the Politico article showed about. Trump's doubling down on the intelligence, and people are saying, well, it's really not there, about China wants Biden. But even if that's the case or not the case, where is the Biden, foreign policy experts? He's got Jake Sullivan. He's got some pretty smart guys over there. Where are they as far as, where are they as far as any response? Is there any response in this at all?
I was just thinking that when I was watching that clip for the first time in the break, and I was thinking, gosh, can you imagine what our China policy here today from the United States would be if Hillary had won, and what it could be in just a few months' time as well if they get their way? I mean, it would be the total opposite of what Mike Pompeo is doing. And the foreign policy experts, as you say, I mean, the Ben Rhodeses of the world, these super intelligent, hyper intelligent. I mean, for the audience to understand, this is the DC set. They are the glitterati of this town. They have dinner parties at each other's houses every night. They talk to each other as if they're all geniuses. But they don't have an answer to any of this. Ben Rhodes was asked yesterday, he keeps calling Trump a dictator. He was challenged, hey, find me a dictator that's like Donald Trump and that's governed like Donald Trump. He goes, Viktor Orban, who just got re-elected in a democratic election that was...
that could have been his response.
It was his response. It's crazy.
This is about managed decline. The reason Donald Trump is president of the United States is that Hillary Clinton represented the Wall Street corporatist faction in the political class. They were comfortable with the managed decline. People in their campaign said later they didn't realize how much traction we could get on China. At that time, it was really about the manufacturing jobs leaving in the upper Midwest. They realized they didn't have a response to that. What I've heard from many people is they actually believe in the Thucydides trap. They believe that we're the declining power, that the Judeo-Christian West is on the decline, and that the Chinese authoritarian model, and you see this from, you see a number of the commentators around there, they like the model. This is what this whole thing on the pandemic, it's their model of total totalitarian rule versus ours, which is a little shaggy. It's a democracy. And they're pitching the West is in a decline. We're the rising power. Sign up now. And this is why they're telling, Iran and Pakistan and Turkey and the Gulf Emirates, hey, the Western model doesn't work. Our model works with total totalitarian control, particularly now with technology. And we're the rising power. That's just fundamentally wrong. The Alliance of Liberty is actually the rising power. and these virtues, and this is why we have new federal state people on all the time, the whistleblower movement. You see the best and the brightest, I think, in China right now that want to break out, that understand that it can't continue. Right? Milesguo continues to say, hey, they're a paper tiger. They may look overwhelming, right? But when you really look at that feet of clay, and that feet of clay is that they don't believe in freedom. They don't believe in liberty. And Lao Beijing now, that's why they keep him behind a firewall, technological firewall. They're kept behind a technological firewall because they understand if they could communicate daily, if they could listen to the war room pandemic without the GTV guys having to blow it through a firewall every day, hey, we'd have 2 million callers a day coming in from mainland China and saying, hey, we want some of this American technology. We want some freedom. And this whole thing is that the Chinese are not prepared to govern themselves. Look at Taiwan. Look at the great job Taiwan's done the best job of anybody in this pandemic. Look at the folks in Hong Kong, further suppressed. Look at in the United Kingdom and Europe. Look at the protest in Germany and Canada and Japan, throughout the world, where the Chinese are given freedom. And here's the interesting thing. They're fighting for freedom at the same time in the United States. We have a totalitarian cultural revolution.
Yeah, we're fighting for serfdom.
It's fighting for serfdom, fighting for economic serfdom. So this is why these are turbulent times. This is a fourth turning. It's hard to get your balance, hard to get your feet. That's what we try to do in this show every day, is reinforce what's the signal, not the noise. Don't worry about the stuff on the surface. Worry about the big powers. We for months, I think almost years now, have been talking about what has to happen to come together around this the CCP.
Yesterday, many brothers and sisters called me from Inner Mongolia. In recent days, we saw kids there getting locked up in schools. The feeling from watching that, brothers and sisters, if you have even just an ounce of conscience, we all grew up going to schools. Watching those kids getting locked up in schools, they weren't allowed to go home. How lunatic has the world become? I told many of my friends today, when I told you in the Western world a few years ago that the CCP wants to control the earth, you thought I was mad. Look at what the CCP did in Xinjiang, Tibet, Taiwan, Hong Kong, as well as what they did according to the DOJ file, and what they did in Europe and Africa. From these, you can see what the CCP wants to do. The CCP and the Nazi Germany between 1932 and 1946 are exactly the same. Their crazy and aberrant economic growths, extreme nationalism, a bunch of crazy people in their overseas propaganda departments, producing the most demonic philosophy in human history. A lie told 1,000 times becomes the truth. They both made movies and massive overseas propaganda, brainwashing their own people, hijacking the people onto their war machines. When British warplanes bombed Berlin and Hitler's hometown, Hitler was still planning to attack the USSR and Stalingrad. Wasn't this crazy?
The United States has said it will stop paying its dues to the World Health Organization. Indonesia reports new record in daily virus infections. Russia registers nearly 5,000 new coronavirus cases. India reports record daily jump in cases. CDC tells US states to prepare for vaccine by November 1st. Russia resumes international flights with Egypt, UAE, and the Maldives. China has offered experimental coronavirus vaccines to aviation industry workers, according to a regulatory notice seen by the Reuters news agency. The UN Refugee Agency says the coronavirus threatens progress made in improving education for child refugees. Former Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi diagnosed with coronavirus.